Hi, and welcome to The Curling Show, the podcast that brings you interviews with the sport's top athletes and the people who shape the game. Supported by listeners like Brian Bentley, who went to the Support the Show link at thecurlingshow.com. I'm Dean Gemmel, and in this edition, we talk to one of the top women's players whose team rattled off 3 straight Asham World Curling Tour wins to start the season. The third on the team that won 3 straight Asham World Curling Tour events in a row before this past weekend. Amy Nixon, welcome back to The Curling Show.
Thanks, Dean.
Hey, your third time of the show. In fact, it's a record, I believe, among women curlers. So that either speaks to the fact that you have time, or I don't think you have that. I don't know why you've been on 3 times, but whatever, we'll go with it.
Well, it's an honor anyway.
All right. A shaky one, but you can accept it. Hey, I had it all planned to talk about your team's super hot start this season, and then you go 1-3 at last weekend's Women's Capital One Grand Slam, the Casinos of Winnipeg Classic, completely screwing up my preparation. What happened out there?
Oh, I don't know. I think 2 of the teams we lost to were in the final, so that made us feel a bit better, and we just weren't finishing like we normally do. So what can you do about that? It happens.
It was one of those things. I mean, you dropped into the sea, and then you play Kelly Scott down there. So it was one of those things, too, where some other teams lost and sort of bunched together, didn't they?
Yeah, but you know what? That's the game, and whatever. We never anticipated we were going to win every event, and sure, it was a disappointing 1-3, but certainly not the end of the world, that's for sure.
Yeah, after a start like your team had, when does the thought start creeping into your heads that it can't probably won't last? Does it start to happen after a third win and they're on the way out to Winnipeg?
No, I think it even when it's happening, when we were winning those events, we were very appreciative of it because, we are a good team, no question, but you have to have some luck and things go your way as well. So, I know when we won the third one in Calgary, I sort of turned to Browman and raised my eyebrows and sort of went, It wasn't even like a huge... You see a lot of teams win and they kind of all hug and get all fired up, and we were just sort of like, wow, this is
a bit surreal.
Is a real great thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, National Development Coach Paul Webster on his blog, bcbound@curling.ca, the CCA website, got into the interviewing business himself and had a Q&A post with you. One of the things that you mentioned was that your team took a genuine break over the summer and stayed away from the ice until September. Do you think that freshness at the start of the season was a reason you started so well?
I think it contributed, although if you look at last season at the very beginning, we lost the final in Vernon and we lost the final in Calgary, so we only won really 2 more games
right.
in some ways than we did last year. So it's not a out of nowhere kind of a thing, I don't think.
That's a good point, isn't it? It's a razor-thin margin between winning and losing at your level.
That's right. And we don't have to win everything. No team has to win everything. So certainly at the end of last year, when we evaluated the difference between our team and, for example, Kevin Martin or Glenn Howard or Jennifer Jones' team, one of the things that we identified, and it's pretty obvious, is that they all had a lot more number 1 placings than we did, and that's an important part on the CTRS. Obviously, we're all in a points race for the Olympic trials, or the Roar of the Rings, as it's correctly called.
Yeah, I've got to get that right myself.
Yeah.
You talk about the fact, like Martin and Howard had more number 1s. I think for many, the parity in the women's game is different. I think, there's just a lot more of it. I think there are a lot more teams that can win. Would you agree with that?
I think that has definitely been historically the case. I think that, for example, Jennifer Jones' team has sort of challenged that in the last couple of years. Maybe not so much this year, but the 2 years prior to that, they definitely did. So I'm not sure. I think there is more division happening on the women's side as well as we go. But yeah, I think on the men's side you're looking at 2 or 3 teams that sort of dominate, and then a whole schwack underneath. Whereas on the women's side, I'd argue there's sort of like a top 8.
Right. And you look at Team Jennifer Jones start this season. It's certainly surprised some people, but it hasn't surprised me. Not because I don't think they're a great team. I just think. If you look at the record last year, they were, 1 or 2 shots from a mediocre season.
That's interesting. I would say it hasn't really surprised me very much, and more from the perspective of, they have everything they need right now. They have, I'm sure, quite a bit of funding and money, so they're not really concerned about money. They're into the trials, they're into the Canada Cup, or the Players' Championship, the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. They're into everything. They're they're in a different place. So I can't imagine. I mean, I'm sure they're working hard and all of that, but I can't imagine the motivation is quite the same at this exact moment as it will be later on in the season.
What about that for a moment? I mean, you look back at your year last year, and you guys were, in my mind, just one shot away from really a career year. You're always trying to juggle work and curling. In some ways, when you look back at the loss in the Scotties final, do you think the fact that maybe the end of last season wasn't the way it would have been if you'd won that game, maybe it'll keep you fresher in this season and as you head to the Tim Horton Roar of the Rings?
Sure. I mean,
you'll go with it, right?
Yeah. I mean, everything would have been a lot different had we won in Regina, I'm sure. But all teams that eventually win have lost as well. I mean, that's kind of the game, and I'm still probably not over it, but that's what you use. That's the fuel, right? So we didn't have a very good end of season last year, had some reflection on it, had some time away from the game, and I think what we have as a team is pretty unique. From my perspective anyway, I've never played with three people that are completely on the same page, that are incredibly intelligent about the game, that are great players. I mean, part of the reason that we won 3 major events to start is because if I had a bad game, Bronwyn didn't. If Chelsea struggled, I didn't. If Shannon struggled, Chelsea didn't. Like, whatever. Like, we're all sort of picking up if somebody else is kind of slipping a bit, and that's a pretty unique and special thing, which I think is why the top men's teams do it, because there's no chance that anyone's going to be bad, and if somebody's bad, it's 80%,
Right.
So I think we're pretty fortunate right now to be on the team that we're on, and I feel pretty privileged to be playing with who I am.
No, I mean, your lineup does look like it. You look like you have great chemistry on the ice. I thought last year at the Scotties until the final, you guys were the best team there, and I can tell by the disappointment in your voice, you would have liked to have had the last game back. It was you were probably the best player on the ice all week until the final. What about Shannon's last rock in the Scotties? Some people, including Bob Weeks in his blog, thought that you missed the sweeping call. Were you and Shannon on the same page about how to hit that rock?
Yeah, we were on the same page. I think that it's a funny thing because I've thought about that quite a bit this year when I'm calling, and line calling is sort of gut instinct, and we just miscalled it. And quite frankly, Bob Weeks or whoever else should be looking at the rest of the game and the opportunities that I had as a thrower that were probably a lot more significant than that exact moment. We missed that by so little, and that's going to happen in the game. Like, you can't control that all the time. Like, whatever. I'm not really concerned about that. There's a lot more to be learned from my throwing and some other line calls in the game or weight calls in the game. So I'm not really hung up on that one.
Right. Well, I mean, Monday morning quarterbacking is what people like to do, I guess. But
yeah.
It's not the first time that a line call has been critical in a big event. So it was. I think it's. I'm glad you talk about it, anyways. And I think line, like you say, line calling's instinct, and sometimes you're not dead right.
It's kind of like driving, and you should be able to
like driving.
It kind of is. It's
you
like
drive on instinct, Amy?
Totally. You should be able to sort of just drive, right? But on occasion, something happens that you're not anticipating, and it's like, oh crap! Look at that, we got in a little fender bender. So.
Oh, okay. All
you know what I mean? Like,
I get you.
Accidents happen, and one of the greatest men's players that I've admired for a long time, and John Meade, he got ridden pretty big after Halifax, and I thought that was pretty unfair as well, because he was trying to make something absolutely exact that had they been full 12 or whatever, it wouldn't have been necessarily any good. So, that's the nature of our game. I suppose I'm glad that people are commenting and caring about it, because it means that people are watching.
Well, it's interesting. I asked John about that line call on this podcast afterwards, and I told him I wouldn't ask him about it again. I was just going to talk about it once, so I'll do the same for you. That's the last time you'll hear about it. But you're dead right. That's what he said. He said he was trying to win the game for his team, and he thought just a mediocre role wasn't going to do it. So.
Yep.
Hey, you're an attorney, Amy, and I know that being well prepared is part of your personality. Although Paul Webster talked on his blog about how you were streamlining your team's team of experts this year, it still sounds like a bit of an entourage to me, to be honest. During a typical week, who are you actually working with, and how often?
Typical week, mostly just with each other. I mean, Paul Webster, we probably see him once a week. during a typical month, we probably see Ron once a month or so. Derek, our sports psychologist, a couple times a month, that kind of thing.
Talk to me about the sports psychologist role. I mean, with a few exceptions, there seems to be a real gender gap, I think, when it comes to the likelihood of a team drawing on sports psychology. Men's teams don't seem as likely to use them. It's I'm not going to get into gender roles here on this podcast. I don't want to tread in that country. But for the men out there, tell me what your team gets from it.
Well, I think Derek, our sports psychologist, is primarily a facilitator, quite honestly. I think he could be very useful to any team, regardless of gender or personality, because his role has just mostly been, hey guys, I got a question for you, and probably no different than a lot of people can do on their own or with a particular coach, but Derek just seems to work for us. So.
All right, Amy, I finished with a run back. You know how this goes. I give you a topic, you give me your thoughts in 1 to 3 words.
Okay.
Winning a Grand Slam in Calgary.
Lots of fun.
That was the first time in a long time, eh? A Calgary team had won that spiel?
About 11 years, I think, yeah.
11
And we
years.
were co-chairing, Brown and I were, so it was good. Yeah.
And you were playing Cheryl Bernard in the final, so it was a Calgary lock.
Yep.
Your husband's team this year?
I don't know. Lots of fun.
Oh, geez.
Hopeful.
Hopeful,
I don't know.
there you
I'm
go.
hopeful for them, yeah.
It's tough out there in Alberta, isn't it? I mean, it's just it's tough when you're a good team, but they've got these collections of great teams. The drop in the price of oil.
Very little impact on a litigation lawyer.
A Calgarian.
Yeah, the huge impact on Calgary, but I'm not really concerned.
The curling community on Facebook.
Actually challenging.
Challenging? Why challenging?
Because I never know, who I should be saying yes or no to. I don't want everybody in the world to see all my pictures.
Good point. Yeah, it's I see people with like 8,000 friends, and I don't know, but I'm more of I try to keep it lean myself. But although it was interesting, like Bob Weeks said, to hear that Randy Furby was helping a friend build a deck. But
yeah, exactly.
Investing in the equity markets right now.
Last thing on my mind.
Oh, all right. I like to throw a few of these in. Bin Yu Wang's Team China.
Interesting. I mean, total field throwers. Very surprising.
Really? You think they're field players?
Oh, man. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I know Ray Turnbull was talking about that last year in a broadcast, but, you would think they'd be technicians, but you're thinking they're more artists.
Very much so. I think they're all about the time they put in because, I mean, quite honestly, if you watch them throw at a broom, they're not throwing at a broom. It's an interesting team to play because you can't necessarily follow them down at all. You don't even, are they aiming at a foot? Or are they aiming, you don't know for sure. But they're a good team. They're a darn good team.
But you don't think they do that on purpose, right? You just think that's, they have they're field players.
If they do it on purpose, I don't know what the value would be. So right. I don't necessarily think they do it on purpose.
I wouldn't think that either. But
yeah, they just put a ton of time in, so they get feel.
The Chris Schilly Charlie Thomas combination.
We'll see how that works out for them long term.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like both those guys, but it seems combustible to me. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think the whole team is young and has potential to be combustible, but who knows? I mean, up to them. I don't know. I'm sure they'll work at it. So.
And finally, Canadians who coach international teams.
I hope they're getting a lot of money.
Yeah. I don't think anybody in curling is getting a lot of money, Amy, but some money.
Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of really great coaches go and do it recently, so not a concern.
Hey, here's a thought. Do you think curling, coaching in curling, has advanced as far as the players have? In other words, do you think there's more? Here's my opinion. I think there are more that players have gotten better and coaches haven't.
I think the problem, that may be true, and if it is true, I think the issue is, they're volunteers.
I mean, I shouldn't say, actually, I don't think coaches, yeah, it's true. I don't think coaches haven't gotten better. I think that there's not as many good coaches as we haven't seen as many, the coaching ranks grow with as many good coaches as the playing ranks have.
I completely agree with that, and I think we're relying a lot on parent coaches right now. And I think long-term that's an issue for the Canadian Curling Association and the elite curling world in Canada big time. I think it's huge. Yeah.
Your father's not coaching you anymore, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Speaking of well, he was a parent coach who I thought was pretty decent.
Yeah, I enjoyed him, and I miss him, but that's the nature of the game, too. I mean, he lives in Edmonton, and he had reasons to step away for a while, and we're just not going to have him back right now. So.
Right. All right, Amy, I give everybody a chance to name sponsors. Last year the list was a little light. I'm hoping it's a little bigger this year.
Not really. Olsen's Curling Supplies, who, of course, have always been awesome to us, and CMA Alberta, which is Brownman's employer, certified management accountants. And we're working on one more, so hopefully in a month or so I'll be able to list somebody else.
All right. Well, if I really get a run on donations to this show, I feel bad for you guys, so I might have to send you a crest and some cash. But
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyways, well, at least you've got money in your pocket from those spiels, so that helps.
That's right. For sure.
Hey, thanks for your time. I know it's valuable these days. You got a busy job and a busy schedule, and good luck this weekend in Red Deer.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Dean.
That's Amy Nixon on The Curling Show. Check out Curl TV this weekend if you want to see the strongest field so far on the Asham World Curling Tour, playing at the Cactus Pheasant Classic in Brooks, Alberta. And if you're a curler in Southern Ontario, I hope you're considering attending the first Capital One Grand Slam of the season, the Masters of Curling, that starts on November 12th in Waterloo. If you listen to this podcast, you know I believe the success of these events is important for our game. No, they don't have the same feel as a Tim Hortons Brier, but the British Open isn't the Masters either. Rather than compare the Grand Slams to championships with, yes, more tradition and more history, enjoy the differences these events present. They may not have provincial rivalries, but they have stronger fields and Mark Shurik ice. If you go, be a sports fan. Cheer the players you like, and unless they're throwing the rock, boo the ones you don't. Curling needs more major events, and despite what some might think, I believe that if the Grand Slams grow stronger, they will, eventually, help the sport at the grassroots level. It may take some time, but few young kids get interested in playing a sport that doesn't allow them to dream of competing at a level that is at least semi-professional. As always, thanks for listening. Here's the sort of professional, Black Pudding.